you're asking about, should you pay to have your work be featured in, quote, art books? I haven't done that too often. And what I'm more interested in are art magazines or magazines. And mainly because there's different demographics of people that are often flipping through magazines. And the interesting thing for me is that I've often found interesting artists in magazines or publications outside of art books. So it depends on what art book you're talking about. You might ask the publisher what some of the results are that artists have gotten from being featured in their art book. And that's a little bit of a different conversation to have with that versus if you're going to pay for an advertisement in a magazine to advertise something like a show or your work. Or sometimes artists get approached to get a feature in a magazine where you might have to pay a fee. I actually recently have had a bunch of artists that I work with be featured in a wonderful magazine called Catamaran Magazine. They don't charge and they're very selective and it's very well curated. And that's an example. And you can tell from the advertising, they have very high-end galleries that are advertising with them. I actually was so impressed that I decided to run an ad for my book release in their magazine. You know, I have to say, I am a fan of paying for advertising. It's how I built my name when I first started. And I talk about this in my first book, The Art Cure, where I lived in the basement of my building for a year and I took the money that I would have spent on rent and I put it into advertising. So for me, sometimes you don't know what paying for an ad or paying for something to put yourself into a book or a publication is going to do for you. I felt that that was a really great way for a lot of people to see my name and see the artists I was working with. So depending on the demographics of this art book and how it's distributed, who's actually looking at the art book, who would get to see your art, those are all questions you have to answer to decide if you want to advertise or not in this particular art book. And if it's just something that's like a vanity thing where it's not really being distributed, then I might reconsider that and find something that has a wider audience where it's actually worth the investment you're going to be making. Awesome. And you could also ask what you get out of your investment in advertising in their publication.